wrong. I'm trying to figure out why the church would be legally responsible for like malpractice as a funding of the building of the organ. Like that's where I'm so confused.
Do you not? I mean, right there, mortgage insurance. Why do we have home insurance? Like if someone slips down my stairs, they can sue me, right? How can you possibly say that the church?
Yeah, but they can't.
You don't understand the liability of the church.
Right, but they would sue the
insurance. That's a huge liability, and unfortunately, people take advantage of that.
The money for the wood.
The reason the church doesn't. The reason the church doesn't avail itself of the opportunities to get into these endeavors is it can't further diversify its interests. The purpose of the church. The purpose of the church is not simply to be a reallocation of funds service the way that the federal government does with welfare. That's not the function of the church.
Sure.
The church does perform a welfare function, certainly, but it does that through a separate wing, through the corporation of the bishop of the church, through its welfare programs. Yeah. It does operate a welfare program. But what it does is it allows those state agencies and local enterprises that are best suited, that have the infrastructure to care for the poor and those who are unhoused at a much more effective and efficient rate. And it encourages members through its vast system of encouraging service for the members to participate in those endeavors like food kitchens and food banks.
And I get all this.
And other services.
Yeah, and
the church is not trying to be a reallocation of funds service. The church is trying to encourage the members to engage because it's through our own acts of individual service. So if the church does too much, the members will simply pay the church to do the function that the church itself is trying to get the members to do individually.
Well, sure, and that all makes sense, and I agree with that. But I guess where I would have a question.
Paying tithing does not absolve you of your individual responsibility to care for the poor, to feed the sick, to help the widow and the orphan. We are not absolved of that responsibility simply because we pay tithing and fast offerings.
I know. Yes, we've drifted. So what my question stands though to say, okay, so I agree. It's not the job of the church. They're not going to do it that way. Granted, I'll give that to you. Sure. Okay. I still have a question, particularly with regard of how the church, spends their money. For example, Dave suggested earlier that the building of temples is service, and the number $70 million was tossed out. I'm not going to stick to that. Could be 50, could be 112. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Let's use 70 as a ballpark. $70 million is dedicated toward the building of this temple, which I hope we could agree pretty much only serves members of the church. Really doesn't do much for anybody in the community outside of members of the church. Home value, not really, historically. So my point would be, the church has $70 million they're willing to invest over here, over and over and over and over and over again, dozens of times.
But investing.
So my point would be, could once...
Building temples is the actual function of the church.
We're not going to divest. I understand. It's not an investment. I'm with you. Sure. I'm going to speak on my part, not the
What's the function of the church?
I got my guy. That's not the point of my argument. You're latching on to
what food you got, man?
My point is, if the church has $70 million to spend on temples over and over again, could they once spend $70 million to contract the building of a homeless shelter? Could they do that?
No, they can't.
No, because they should build another temple. If they have an extra $70 million, they should build another temple. If they no, it has nothing to do with the liability.
These two other guys were arguing legal liability.
I would reject that liability argument.
That's why I'm confused. Why couldn't the church give $70 million and say, here's a grant?
Because it needs to build another temple.
Right. So what I'm saying is,
if it has an extra $70 million, if it has an extra $70 million, if it has an extra $70 million, it should build another temple.
Got it. Because the goal, as I see it, to me, that's the goal.
Is to accomplish its ecclesiastical function.
Yes, and its ecclesiastical functions do not seem to be the service of the general public.
Yes, it is the service of the general public, because the purpose and function of the church is to save your eternal and immortal soul, not necessarily to feed you. But Jesus's function was not Jesus's function wasn't just to eternally distribute bread to the hungry. But he was trying to save their souls. He did do that for a time, and when he stopped doing it, they left.
Jesus said,
They left him.
"Lord, you will always
He was proving a
have
point.
with you."
He was proving a function, and the only reason he fed them on those 2 occasions is so that they would remain and listen to him.
Yes.
And when he stopped providing free bread, they left him. Because providing free bread, there is an area in California where the church invested a large amount of money to try to help a group of very impoverished people. And as a consequence of that, they all joined the church. And they had to build a new chapel and everything in that area. And then within 6 months of trying to help the people to get off of the church's teat and actually function and resume their own careers and their own work life, and not to just simply rely on church welfare, as soon as the church pulled the plug on it, they all went inactive and stopped going to church, because that is the function. The purpose of the church is to accomplish its spiritual objectives. And people thinking that its purpose is to redistribute wealth are socialists or communists, or they're people who think that government's function is to
You say that like a swear word.
People believe the same way that they think the federal government's function is to redistribute wealth, to take wealth from rich people and redistribute to the have-nots. That's what people think the function of the government is. That's not the function of government. The function of government...
wanted to finish my thought there.
But I'm just saying, the function of the church is to perform the function of the church. That people don't believe in it or don't agree with it is irrelevant to the fact that the LDS Church exists to perform and accomplish its ecclesiastical and spiritual goals. That's
I get that. I do. I understand that. I truly, and I'm not trying to trap you. I understand that for real, that the church's goals are to enact the church's expressed goals. And those expressed goals are of the spiritual nature. They're of the wellness of the souls of mankind. Like I'm not trying to trip you. I agree with you. I understand that those are the church's goals. My point is that when I zoomed back, when I chose to step away from the church, and when I picked a different perspective and I zoomed out and I saw the goals of the church, and more specifically, not the goals of the church. I saw what the church was choosing to do and what it was choosing not to do. When I zoomed out far enough to consider those choices the church was making, it made me scratch my head and go, I get that their goals are aligned with the spiritual ecclesiastical nature of things. I do. I just also see organizations doing what I consider to be more good that are also claiming to be for the ecclesiastical benefit of people. Like there are churches that are more charitable than the Mormon church by percentage. And that confused me. I was like, again, I get that their goals are not to, take care of people. I get that. It's not to give people food.
No, their goals are
not.
You're mistaking it. No, you're mistaking it, because the function of the church is to provide people principles and doctrines that if they live by those, they will fix all of the world's problems.
No, I know what the church believes. I know what they sell.
By teaching people to live in a certain way, which includes causing them to sacrifice their wealth, to sacrifice their time to help others. I have spent enormous amounts of my free time donating to others, my wealth and my time, as much as I can give to people, as that doesn't detract from my capacity to continue to support my family financially.
Fantastic.
The issue with it is that is what's instilled in members, or should be. The church is not here to do it for you.
I know. I feel like you think I'm disagreeing with you. I know.
No, I get that, but I'm just not understanding, because you're still making the argument the church needs to do more.
No, I'm not saying it needs to do more.
It's different than the way it's determined as the best way to do things.